Welcome to Anything and Everything. I'm your host, Angelo Esposito, bringing you compelling chronicles of entrepreneurship, where success means doing anything and everything. Welcome to another episode of Anything and Everything. I'm here with Francois from EnsoConnect.com. Francois, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Angelo.
Of course. So, one of the goals of this podcast is to talk about fellow entrepreneurs and really understand why they do what they do and what are some things they've done to kind of get to the point where they're at today. So I think there could be a lot of learnings for other people. And that's kind of where the theme of Anything and Everything came from. It's just most entrepreneurs are willing to do anything and try everything to make their, venture work. So maybe to just kick things off, can you tell people what is Enso Connect?
100%. So Enso Connect is a guest experience platform for the vacation rental industry. What that means is we help digitize and monetize your experience. So think of it like your front desk at your hotel where you have to show your IDs, maybe leave a safety deposit, get your keys to check in. Well, imagine that same process, but you're managing 50 or 100 properties across different locations, and you got to run around and make sure guests are checking in and make sure they're having a great stay. Well, we're going to help you digitize that entire experience and make money along the way.
Awesome. And so let me ask you this: what kind of got you into that space? How did you kind of see that problem, and what got you into it?
Pure accident. I have no hospitality experience. I have no vacation rental experience. Heck, I barely had any experience to start with. I was fresh out of university. I was studying computer science, cognitive science, focused in computational linguistics. And I got accepted into this program it was the Department of Computer Science Innovation Lab. They picked 30 students and they said, solve a problem in this theme. And if you win the pitch competition at the end, you'll get 10 grand. So I was like, okay, I'm all in. That is the only course I'm focusing on for this final semester. I'm going to get that 10 grand. And that way, when I graduate, I at least have $10,000 to my name. First weekend, best friend calls me up. He's like, Francois, you're French. You don't know how to ski. You're trying to become Canadian. This is embarrassing. Let's go on a ski trip. We go on this ski trip. We book a vacation rental. It was on Airbnb. It was supposedly cheaper, but by like a few dollars from a hotel. And that's when the whole problems started. We show up, the key's frozen under the doormat, the owner or property manager is not answering. We finally get in, the heating system is per room. We're asking how to get pizza delivered in the middle of nowhere, no answers. And then 5 days after checkout, I get a text message saying we left one of the windows open in the kitchen. Kitchen pipes froze. We owe him $5,000 and he's sending us to small claims court. So that is the birth story of Enso
Damn.
Connect.
Okay. Okay, well now I'm wondering, and I think our listeners are wondering, did you at least get that $10,000 from that competition to pay off that $5,000?
So not only did we get the $10,000, but on top of that, we didn't even have to pay the $5,000 because technically the property manager never communicated any instruction whatsoever. We had to figure this out all by ourselves. The lack of communication between the guest and the property manager led to Airbnb taking our side of the equation. And so we got kind of lucky there. I think one of my sales guys may have reached out to this particular property manager recently, and I was like, no, not him.
Hey, who knows? Maybe you'll get a better experience. That's not for
100%.
Future guests, but oh man, that's crazy. So walk me through that a little more. So you went there, and I guess it's sometimes it's not one specific thing, but it could be a sum of many small things that just kind of, I'll give a parallel, right? I work in the restaurant space, and in the restaurant space, sometimes it's not one thing, but it's a sum of many that makes kind of the experience like meh. And it could be like food was a bit late, or they didn't refill your water, or it was tough. And sometimes it's out of their control, but it was tough to find parking, and right. And you kind of add all these things up, and then you're like, my overall experience was bad. So tell me a bit about what are some of these key, moments of truth, if you want to call them, that a guest kind of encounters.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the primary one we talk with the operators, we're very focused on selling the value to our hosts, property managers, and operators to help them with, scaling their business. I think that's at the end of the day what we're, the key value behind Enso Connect. And alongside doing that by making sure that they can maintain a high guest experience. So there's an interesting statistic in the vacation rental industry, which is there's a direct inverse correlation between the quality of the guest experience and the size of the property manager. Okay, the more properties they manage, the, pardon my French, shittier the experience.
Oh, shit,
And
okay.
am I allowed to use?
Yeah, no, of course,
Yeah,
of course.
okay.
This is anything and everything. You could say
Okay,
anything and
good, good,
everything.
good. Um,
Yeah.
and so, and it's just because you have, it's what I like to say, death by a thousand cuts. So it goes back to what you were saying of like, maybe the water, maybe it's the parking, maybe it's this, and overall the experience wasn't good. There's one key defining moment for that, which is very much related to communication, but is the check-in. At the end of the day, that's all a guest wants to be able to do is check in. But there's a lot of operational complexities that come with checking into a property. It might mean verification. It might mean you need a safety deposit, pet fees. The check-in time's too early. You need to update it. Like there's a lot of complexity that comes behind that, behind the scenes. So, I don't think we can attribute our platform to solving one single problem, although check-in would be one of the biggest focuses, if you will. It's really providing the flexibility for operators to solve different problems along the guest journey the way they want it to be solved. Maybe checking in is just a message with the instructions, and that's fine by them. They don't need some complicated system. However, they need to make sure all verification is done ahead of time, before these times and these days. And so it's really, our platform is extremely configurable, and it's about just giving the tools to our operators to design the ultimate guest experience the way they want it to be done.
Got it. And so before a host, works with you, I imagine there's some that are, barely doing anything. But the ones that are doing something, what are they doing if they're not using your system? What's out there?
Yeah.
Is it pen and paper? Is it Excel? Is it what are they doing to kind of keep track of these processes?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it depends on the audience that we target. It depends on the location of the audience as well. If they're urban destination versus rural, like there's different approaches to these. I think what we've seen over the past 2 years, specifically around COVID, is the acceleration of point-based solutions in this industry because of how easy it is to make money, both as our clients, how easy it's for them to make money, but also for us as software companies, how easy it is for us to solve one thing, sell it, make a bit of money on it. And so what this led was to a extremely fragmented market where operators are cobbling together 7 or 8 different tools that don't communicate with each other. And that means, let's say you're using a verification system and you're using a smart lock system. Well, the guest hasn't been verified or has been flagged on this verification system, and yet the system with the smart locks is still providing the smart lock codes. So what's the point? You just created a new problem. Yes, you got most of your guests verified, and yes, you've got automation for smart locks, but now that these two systems aren't speaking with each other, you're creating a new issue for yourself. So again, it's our approach is very much, we realize that coming into this industry, as young founders, as first time founders, I would say, it's difficult for us to promise the world and say we're going to do everything. So instead of trying to do that, why not connect all of these tools together to make the experience better? And hence the name Enso Connect. No pun intended, but kind of.
Yeah, I was just about to ask because I didn't even know that, but that makes sense. That where the connect comes from. I was just about to ask that. Is that where the connect comes from? No, it's a good point you make because sometimes, I guess when these hosts are doing nothing, it's better that they start with something. But, in doing something and solving, 7 individual problems, like you said, well, now you're kind of at a layer 2 problem. So you're probably better off than you were in phase 1, but now you're kind of like, man, 10 different tools. They don't speak to each other. This sucks, and this is taking me as much time.
Exactly.
That's super neat. So what are the main things you connect? So obviously I heard about verification. That makes a ton of sense because, making sure the guests that show up, especially when you think of Airbnb, you think of like one of the most common things that could happen is, or fear that I think hosts have is like someone's going to just throw a party, crazy parties at my place. Yeah. So tell me about the verification and what the typical, and I know it probably varies quite a bit. What are maybe the key points? I'm thinking verification, digital entry. Walk our guests through the main journey.
So, it starts off with communication, right? Interacting with your customer. They have a question about the property before they even book. How do you answer that question at scale? You manage 100 properties, you get 1,000 questions. You have to answer all of them right away. Now you can grow a team, and that's called growing, but not really scaling, which means just having it for every 10 properties, a new person. And now it's just a linear cost of goods sold to your business, if you will. Or you can start thinking about automations, AI, and how to answer those messages at scale. Then once they're ready to go and they've actually booked the property, we're going to sync all of that information from different systems, notably your property management software. and we're going to send a link, which is my favorite thing ever right now. It is called the boarding pass, and the boarding pass is our killer product. It's a web app, and it's fully configurable, and it's going to navigate that guest through their journey. So it's going to start off with, tell me more about your stay, right? Data collection, understanding who this guest is. Then it's going to shift over, maybe if you want, depending on certain settings, to ID collection. Then maybe a service agreement or a house agreement that you want to sign. Then maybe safety deposit, pet fees. And once they've gone through this first step, which we encompass as verification, then they'll get access to their main portal, which is fully branded with the property manager's logo. That's another topic of this audience wants to showcase their brand. And we're going to present information about the property, the address, some guides about local areas, things for them to start prepping their trip and get excited about the trip. Once they're ready to check in, we're going to create a monetization touch point. Maybe it's too early for them to check in, but you can still provide the check-in instructions. You're just going to have to charge for it and make extra money as the property manager. So we're going to upsell those kinds of touch points, if you will. And this could be early check-in, mid-stay cleaning, late checkout, you name it, even products if you wanted to, champagne on arrival if you want. Helicopter ride from the airport to the villa, whatever
Really?
you can think of.
That's awesome.
Oh man, I've seen some crazy stuff. Like the villa helicopter to we rent our fridge because our property doesn't come with a fridge, and it's like, whoa, what? So
Okay,
there's a bit
so
of
both
everything,
extremes. Yeah,
exactly.
wow.
And then check-in instructions. Now, do you have smart locks? Do you not have smart locks? Is it just the front door that has a smart lock or the gate? And so really configuring those stages, and then again, communicating with the guest along the way throughout it. So it's messaging, verification, check-in, upsells, guides about the property, all interconnected in one platform.
Got it. And so let's say, what's the typical size of venues you work with? Like, where would you say is your sweet spot? I know it seems like you work with as small groups all the way to really large. You guys seem to have a sweet spot where you're like, oh, this type of host crushes it with us, eyes closed kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say the 25 to 80 units is the ones that see the most scale quickly from it because it really helps them digitize a lot. They're in that phase where they've stepped away from just I'm managing properties, I'm on WhatsApp everywhere, I'm running around to, okay, I'm using a property management system. So that's already a great qualifier for us. That means they're interested in technology. They're trying to distribute themselves across multiple channels. Right. Maybe they have their own website now and things like that. And now it's really like they're trying to scale. They're trying to unlock and get past 100 units and become the established property manager of the area that they operate in. That's really our sweet spot, yeah.
Okay, love it. And so for that sweet spot, let's say, what are some, metrics or things you've seen? Like I'm assuming you probably have some case studies or some key KPIs. Can you share any of the things, for anyone that's listening that maybe is a host and they're like, I wonder what the benefits are, of course, streamline operations, but what are some of the actual metrics behind the scenes that you've seen happen to existing customers that use Enso Connect?
I mean, it's this can sound kind of cheesy because every startup fits in one of these two buckets, but save time, make more money. It's one of those two, right? Now, how do I quantify that? Well, I'll give you a few examples. One of our operators pays us $500 a month, generates 7 times that in upsells. Why? Because they upsell things like early check-in, late checkout, and all the flights, the type of guests that they attract, the flights that those guests are taking come in the morning around 11 a.m., all of them, and their check-in time's at 4, and those guests are tired, and they're not going to wait. And so they're going to pay the extra $100 or $200 or whatever it is for the early check-in. These are very nice properties, so the price for those early check-ins are much more expensive. So this would be one kind of case study-based example, but in general, it's creating new revenue streams for operators without actually creating a new hassle. So there's more and more companies in the space that are popping in as like, we're the upsell platform for vacation rentals, and they're amazing, and we partner with many of them, but it's extra work. And as a professional property manager where I manage 50, 100 units, this is a whole new business that I have to start now to start selling experiences and stuff like that. I want to just grow the property. So again, we're embedding that upsell notion within the concept of operational efficiency, which takes me back to save time. And that's being able to respond to questions way faster and thereby converting more of those inquiries into bookings. One really good statistic that we had learned was you increase your inquiry to booking conversion by 20% if you follow up with them. What does that mean? A guest sends you a message. Hey, is your pool heated? And you answer, yep, the pool's heated. Let us know if you're interested in booking. And then you kind of just leave it at that because you have so many other guests that you have to answer if the pool's heated or not. But
Right.
if you just send an automation to say in 3 hours, if the guest doesn't book or reply to this message, send another follow up to say, are you still interested in booking? You increase that conversion rate by 20%. So it's all these little add-ons that
Wow.
allow us to create efficiencies for our
That,
clients, if you will.
that's pretty neat. And let
Yeah.
me ask you this, on the customer side, have you seen hosts that have started with you with X amount of properties and then really grown? Yeah, do you have any
Oh yeah.
examples you can share?
I have one who started with 6 units and now has 156 units. So
Wow.
in like 12 months, which I will
Which
not
is insane
attribute.
on its own. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to attribute that growth entirely to us, although I'm happy to say that we have played a part in this growth. But they have an amazing business model, to be quite honest. But we are a part of that growth, right? And
Wow.
we are a part of allowing them to manage that many units without significantly growing the team, which would have involved raising more money and doing things that might not be traditional for that
Right.
type of pace of growth, if you
Yeah.
will. Yeah,
That's insane. 6 to 150, over
yeah,
150 in 12 months.
yeah.
That's
I'll tell you,
comprehending
the
that.
average
Wow.
contract value of that deal is just amazing.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And so, let me ask you this: what's next for Enso Connect? Right. So it sounds like you guys are working well with groups, really helping them automate things. Streamlining, saving people money, upselling, many moments of truth along that customer journey. Where do you see Enso Connect going in the next 6 months, 12 months, maybe 2 years from now? What's the vision?
um, well, I think it's actually pretty simple. It's we don't have this crazy vision of we're going to build hotels on Mars. Although if Elon Musk wants to digitize his operation on Mars, let me know. We're more than happy to do so. But it's very much focusing on creating a digital experience for guests. I think there's a new trend that is happening where online check-in, right? We're doing it for our flights. I don't know of many people who enjoy going to the airport and waiting in line to get their boarding pass. Well, it's the same concept, right? I don't think there will be many people who will enjoy waiting in front of a vacation rental to get in or waiting at a hotel in the check-in line to get in. I think that concept is slowly dissipating. But doing so is not just providing a smart lock code or here's your check-in instruction via message online. There's all of that operational complexity that comes behind the scenes. So I think for Enso Connect, the vision behind it is making digital experiences available and accessible for all at scale, and allowing people. There's one essence to hospitality that I love is that it's unique. Every vacation rental business is different. Every owner is different. Every guest is different. Every property manager is different, et cetera. And so the concept of a cookie cutter system or platform that just fits you in this mold is why there's so much fragmentation in this space, in this industry, because everyone's like, well, I was a property manager and so I built this system and now I'm selling it to other property managers. And it's like, yeah, but you were a property manager in, I don't know, South Africa, and it's completely different operations than in New Zealand or in New York or whatever that might be. So for us, the vision is, yes, creating digital experiences, but also allowing operators to do so in their own way. And whatever
Right.
that way is, I don't care. I want to support it. Yeah,
That's awesome.
providing you the best practices, of course, because we've seen
That's
some crazy stuff like selling fridges, but
Yeah, that's
yeah,
crazy. Renting a fridge. That's the
yeah.
first time I've heard that. That's insane. And so, for people listening, I think one thing that's always interesting when it comes to entrepreneurs is really how they'll get creative, right? You have so many different constraints when growing a business, and I know you mentioned you're a first-time founder. So, what are some of the lessons you've learned early on in your journey that you could maybe share? Like, I'm sure that, being a founder myself, there's a long list of mistakes and lessons, but any kind of key lessons you'd love to maybe share?
Um, I mean, I have my cheeky ones, which are things like do it first and ask for forgiveness later, as many have said in the past. And I think it embodies more of a take the risk, like jump head in, like go ahead and try to solve these problems. And even if you fail, like learn from your mistakes and then just
Mm,
try again, kind of thing.
mm,
Um, as a first time founder, especially in the past 2-3 years, with the availability of capital and how easily accessible venture capital was, don't forget that you need to build a business, not a just funding arm of cash being spent. Like, remember that there's revenues and that you need to actually turn this into a profit eventually. I think there's like misconception of the venture capital world as to what it was and what it is and where
Right.
it's going now. But then also like focus on the client, like focus on the problem, focus on the client. I have so many friends who come to me with like, I have an idea. I have this thing I want to do. And I'm like, that's great. What's the problem that you're solving? Like and they can't answer it. They're like, no, but like, imagine it'd be really cool if we could do this. I'm like, yes, it would be amazing if we could do that. But like, are you solving anything really? Is there a
Yeah.
reason why? And this, ties back to what I was saying about upsells. It's like, yes, we provide these monetization opportunities, but in the context of making your operations better and more efficient and so on. And so that's the real problem we're solving. Adding revenue while doing it is just like, whoa, amazing. I can make more money while making my life easier, even better. So
Right.
double down on the problem that you're solving. And if you'll know it's not a big enough problem if people aren't willing to pay for it.
Yep.
Like as simple as that. I remember kind of the first time, and I think you helped me out with this actually, the first time we started monetizing our clients. And I was asking you like, what's the best systems to send out proposals and interact with clients and so on. And the first time we landed our big check from a client who was willing to pay, and in my mind, I was like, the system is not fully ready yet. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to make it ready, and we're going to make it fully ready for this client who just paid and is excited for it. And so that means we are actually solving a real problem, and let's double down and make this happen.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, I love it.
Simple as
It's the idea of, in the startup world, sometimes you hear the idea of like vitamins versus painkillers, and it's exactly that. It's like vitamins are nice, and there's some that have been successful, right? There may be a Chrome extension or two out there, or many that have been successful. So it can happen, but generally speaking, it's the difference between a Chrome extension and a full-on business and solving a real pain. So that analogy makes a ton of sense, and we've seen it too. It's like I always tell people that I've had a lot of failed startups, and now I got Whisk, and Whisk is doing pretty well, but so many learnings, and one of the learnings that I always tell people is just get paying customers. The faster you get that, forget all the other noise. There's a million and one things you could do to distract you, but the sooner you get customers, at least in my experience, I found the sooner everything else falls in place, including raising capital. We raised some capital from VCs, but that came later, right? So it was a kind of a domino effect. It was like just focus on clients. And then by focusing on clients and having people pay, even though the app wasn't the best, this is like 7-8 years ago, then it's like that's how I met my co-founder and CTO. He came in and he's like, whoa, people are paying for this? This app kind of sucks. And I'm like, yeah, but it's solving a real problem. And then that evolved. And then fast forward, we got into Techstars. And then fast forward, then we raised capital. But the biggest lesson I had in that kind of whole journey, many lessons, but one of the biggest lessons I really took away was like, the faster you get paying customers, everything else, raising money, hiring people, everything else kind of falls into place. So like if anyone's listening, that's my advice. If you are working on a business, cut the noise, forget about launching the perfect product, forget everything. Just if you can get people paying, all the other learnings will come.
Yeah. And I double down on the product side because I'm a very product focused founder. Like we made a lot of mistakes of building so much before we even had clients really, and then realizing that half of it wasn't fully relevant or wasn't really what they wanted, or if they did, it would involve so much even more product to fix it the way they wanted it to be used and so on. So identify, and it's a bit hypocritical for me to say this because earlier on I said we solve a lot of different problems and death by 1,000 cuts and so on, but identify that one message or that one issue that's repeatable, double down on that one, and then expand slowly or even quickly if you want. But that is the key that's allowing you to drive those sales over and over. In our case, it's the boarding pass. It's the part where I show like, this is how your guests are going to check in, and they're like, wow. And then come all the questions, but can you do this and can you do that? And these all go on the idea board and eventually get filtered into actual sprints to build once they're valid. So.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. It's a hard lesson to learn, but it's I joke around sometimes. I'm like, listen, you could think of like a random horrible idea, like, and you see it sometimes on like Shark Tank or Dragon's Den if you're watching the Canadian version. But it could be the worst idea. But the minute they say like, yeah, well, last year we got $2 million in sales, all the sharks are all interested, right? So it's like money talks basically. So at the end of it, once you have sales, it's like it just helps make everything else easier. So it could be a super random idea, kind of sounds bad. Who would want this product or who would want this app? And then you're like, well, last year we got, or it could be users. We got over 100,000 users in the last 6 months. Whoa, So it's a great way to kind of cut the noise. That's awesome though. And so from there, so for people who are listening who want to understand how they can actually sign up. So we might have hosts that are like, this sounds awesome, I want to try out Enso Connect. EnsoConnect.com, and Enso is spelled
ENSO.
ENSO. Got it. So
Yeah, that's
ENSO
correct.
Connect.com. They go to the website. What do they got to do if they want to try you guys out?
So first, see if this is the right system for you. We don't right now restrict the size directly, although there's a starting price of $100 a month at minimum. So we usually again target larger operators with more complex operations. But have a look and see if the functionalities are what you're looking for, and then you can check our pricing online directly on our website. There's a pricing page. You just need to fill in a bit of information so we can give you the most accurate pricing. And you can either book a demo, or if you're already like kind of sold, you can go ahead and tell our sales team, and they'll get you set up with a proposal and an account. We work, however, exclusively with operators that are using a property management system. So you need to have something like a Guestly, Hostaway, Lodgify, Track, Streamline. We integrate with a dozen of them, the biggest ones in the industry, but you need to be using one of those systems in order to use Enso Connect. That is the one current restriction.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So for everyone listening, EnsoConnect.com, try it out. If you want to see a demo, see if it's a good fit, I highly recommend it. Request a demo, and why not generate more revenue and help your operations grow. So Francois, with that, any last kind of pieces of advice for entrepreneurs out there who are either thinking of starting something up or maybe just started something up? Any words of wisdom you want to share?
I don't have words of wisdom other than Nike's slogan of "Just do it." Like you have to jump into it. Like my story of the school and everything. Like for a whole year, I was building a hospitality focused company in the midst of a pandemic. Probably the worst idea ever. Family telling me to go get a real job, and understandably so, because it didn't pay. But it's like sometimes you have to I find that entrepreneurship is not the perfect scale exponential curve that you see on graphs everywhere that even entrepreneurs will represent from a revenue perspective and so on. It's a constant up and down. Some days you're ripping your hair out of your head, and other days you're like, wow, I'm going to become a billionaire, and then the next day you're like, wait, what's going on? And so it's this constant sort of roller coaster, both emotionally and operationally. And if you just keep focusing on your clients, keep focusing on the problem you're solving, then eventually that starts to smooth out, and then you start to scale.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the way I see it too. I see it as almost like, it's just this roller coaster of ups and downs, but eventually over long enough span, if you zoom out, it's just kind of trending as an upwards graph. But day to day, just so many up and downs. And after 2 months, it might not feel like it's trending up. After a year, but like once you have enough of a time span, then you can kind of see like, oh, cool, this is actually trending in the right way. Well, that's awesome. Exactly. And then one last thing I wanted to just talk about real quick before you wrap things up, because I just realized we didn't even give people a background on you. So you told us a bit about your story about school and 10,000, but you came from France. Tell me a bit about how that jump happened. You were in France, now all of a sudden you're in the Toronto tech scene, raised some VC money. Like, how did that transition happen?
Yeah, everyone thinks I'm Quebec French because I don't have an accent, so they think, oh, you must be Canadian, just so happens to have a French name. And so let me remind people that Toronto's part of the NBA, the National Basketball Association, not the International Basketball Association, which is how Americanized Toronto is. So when you speak French here, they're like, whoa. No, so I was born in London, grew up there in London, England. We have a London, Ontario. We have a Paris, Ontario. We have a Waterloo, Ontario. It's crazy. Born in London, lived there for a few years, moved to New York, moved to Paris, and then moved to Toronto for school, for University of Toronto. Went back to the UK for my master's at Cambridge for a couple months, but then went back to Toronto because I loved Toronto too much. It's the perfect balance, I find, minus the weather. The weather could be, it could change, I would say. Yeah, I mean, nothing crazy special. Just always loved building things, and had a chance to travel as well quite a bit when I was a kid through my dad's work and living in different places. And so creating a product and creating a company that intersected technology and travel, hospitality, these different segments was also fed into my passion, if you will.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Francois, thank you for being here today. And once again, everyone, EnsoConnect.com. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Angelo.